Hi there, it's Adam Westbrook here, and I'm going to quickly take you behind the scenes of the making of this quick film we shot for journalism.co.uk, and along the way share a few really simple tips to help you improve your video storytelling. So the aim of this film then was to show what it's like for journalism students putting together an ambitious student newspaper. Now the video, you'll notice, comes in at nearly 7 minutes, which is more than twice as long as the experts tell you online video should be. So it's vital that we keep people interested. Now the key to this isn't anything technical, it's got nothing to do with the type of camera I used or even how I edited it. It's all to do with the storytelling. So what makes this film quite a nice self-contained story is it follows some of the key conventions of classic storytelling, which are used by Hollywood screenwriters, novelists, documentary makers, and they should be used more by journalists as well. First of all, it has good characters. In particular, we've got Callum, the young charismatic student who's editing the paper. We've got Rosie, the bubbly Nth section editor, and then to balance them both out, we've got Dan, who's the experienced and more sensible lecturer who's leading them all through it. Now they have a supporting cast, of course, of other students, but notice how I don't try to use all of them as individual characters, I just focus on a couple. So with these characters identified, the second thing they must have is a mission, a journey. Hollywood calls it the hero's quest, and if you think about any good movie that you've seen, a book you've read, or even a documentary you've watched, they usually have this element in them. And this journey poses the big question which we want to know the answer to, and that's the reason we keep watching or reading. So the mission for our students is to produce a student newspaper from scratch. Now this of course isn't itself a particularly exciting mission. After all, this happens on student courses and in newsrooms all the time. But within seconds of this film beginning, we introduce a challenge which does make it interesting.
Obviously, as everyone will know, I'm turning it into a tabloid.
And of course it raises the big question, will they make it on time? That's the big question that we as the viewer want to have answered, and it's the reason we keep watching. And posing a question like this is how you keep your viewers watching your films. Now the journey your characters take must have lots of obstacles along the way, and most of all it must have a climax, it must end in an exciting way. Now again, with storytelling convention, the story is presented roughly in 3 acts. In the first act we meet the characters, we get introduced to their world and find out what their mission is. In the second, they begin that mission and start to come across obstacles. That starts around about here. And then in the third act, it starts as they miss that deadline and have a rush to get the paper out before the printer closes. So following all these storytelling conventions, which are as old as the hills really, is a vital way of turning your videos into something more than just a record of what happened. So very quickly then, let's have a look at a few other tips and tricks. I shot this piece in standard definition using the Sony Z1. It's the sort of industry standard reliable workhorse camera. I shot it handheld to create a sense of movement and urgency. And if you look at quite a few of the shots, like this one for example, you'll notice I shoot through people. Half of the frame is filled up with a silhouette or out of focus block of another person who's in the way. This type of cross shooting is a really good way of making the room seem more busy than it is and creating again a sense of busyness and of urgency, which is important for this piece. Now this time-lapse sequence works really nicely as well to create a sense of speed and pace, and it breaks up all the speech that's happened before it. And on a similar note, I use the music here not to really create any sense of emotional impact, but just to drive the narrative forward and to keep the piece moving. A bit earlier on, this tense kind of apprentice style sound is a really nice way to tell the audience that there's some tension, there's some pressure that's on the way, and the upbeat music towards the end adds to the sense of urgency and helps as well the way it ends to round the piece off nicely as well. So what's missing? Well, it needs a better ending for a start, and for example, we don't actually see the actual finished paper, which is a shame. But hopefully what you've been able to see from watching this is that the most important thing in the world ever when you're doing this type of storytelling is the story itself and how you tell it. All the technical and editing tricks can only ever come second to that.
Massive joy, and yeah, I think everyone's happy as well.